In this lecture, we will talk about the basics of document object model and the DOM API that the browser provides in JavaScript so that one can access and manipulate HTML elements on a web page, add new HTML elements to the page, or add any other desirable behavior. So let's start by understanding what is the HTML DOM. Now, an HTML is also said to be a document. And when the browser gets the HTML content, it first parses it into a tree-like structure before painting it or displaying it to the user. This tree structure is known as the document object model because it gives an object-like structure to the HTML, which was in the form of a character sequence till now. A tree data structure has a node, and it can have other nodes as children. Usually it has one node from where the tree starts, and this node is called the root node. So if you look at an HTML document, it looks quite like a tree structure. For example, this HTML can be represented in a tree structure like this. It has a root element, which is the HTML element. Then this HTML element contains two children, head and body. If you look at the anchor node, it has got an href attribute, and it also has a child node inside it, which is a text node having the text mylink. Also, the body element is a child of the HTML element, but itself is a parent of h1 and anchor elements. All right. As you can also see that there are different types of nodes in this tree. We have element nodes, attribute nodes, and text nodes. There can be other nodes as well, like comment nodes or entity nodes. Actually, there are about 12 different types of nodes in a DOM. An element node is one which represents an HTML element like head, body, and title. Attribute nodes represent attributes of an HTML element. For example, href is an attribute of this anchor element having a value which is the URL. My title and my header are text nodes. And text nodes cannot contain any more HTML nodes, of course. So text elements are leaf nodes of a DOM tree. Basically, any node that doesn't have a child node becomes a leaf node. Two nodes having the same parent are called sibling nodes, and that should be obvious. JavaScript provides a document object which contains the HTML DOM object. The document global variable is the entry point to the DOM interface, and it is a document type node as was shown earlier. So if you type in a dot after document, you can see various properties and methods that are provided to us to be able to access and change various nodes. You must also know that any changes done to the DOM reflects on the browser display immediately. The root HTML element can be accessed using the document element property like this. If you recall from the tree structure, document object refers to this node, while the document element refers to the root node. We usually don't access the DOM using the document element, so our main focus will be on the document object. This document object gives access to the head and body elements with the head and body properties like this. Every other element of the DOM can be accessed by making method calls on the document object. Let's look at some of these methods. The most common way is to access an element by its ID. So the DOM API provides a method getElementById, which accesses an HTML element and returns that. For example, if in an HTML we had this image element, we can access it by saying document.getElementsById and pass the ID, which is my image. So this part returns the element itself, and most standard attributes of HTML elements can be accessed as properties of the DOM element. For example, here we are changing the source image. So when this statement is executed, the image source will be changed to new logo.gif file. Here we have assigned the source, but we can also just read the value of an attribute by accessing it as a property. HTML also allows us to have custom attributes for an HTML element. For every element, HTML provides some standard attributes like style or name, but we can also put our own attributes, which are ignored by the browser, but they can be useful in case we are writing our own framework. For example, AngularJS uses custom attributes starting with ng. Anyways, these attributes cannot be accessed as a property of the HTML DOM element. So in this example, this JavaScript statement would be incorrect. But the DOM API provides us a getAttribute method, which gives us the value of the attribute passed. Similarly, it also has a setAttribute method in case we want to set an attribute of an element. In case you want to access the childNodes, DOM API provides a childNodes property, which is an array-like object, so that we can access a child based on its index like shown here. If we want to access the first or the last child of an element, there are more specific properties to do that. The first child property lets us access the first child of an element, while the last child property lets us access the last child of an element. We can also access previous sibling and next sibling of an element like this. First we get to the about image element, and from here the previous sibling property gives us this element, while the next sibling property gives us this one. We can also get all the HTML elements by tag name. For example, if we want to get all the image elements, we can say get elements by tag name and pass the tag name as argument. This will give us an array-like object with all image elements in order of appearance in the DOM tree, which we can access using numeric indices. HTML elements have a name attribute, which is usually used to identify elements, but unlike the ID attribute, which must be unique within the HTML, multiple HTML elements may have the same value for the name attribute. The DOM API provides a method to get all HTML elements by name. And because there can be multiple elements with the same name, we get an array-like object containing all those elements. And again, we can access these elements using numeric indices. Although the DOM interface tried to be a standard, there are differences in implementations across major browsers. So most of the times we use a framework like jQuery to interact with the DOM, which hides these cross-browser issues. So I will not talk more about the DOM API. This lecture should act as a gentle introduction to what the DOM is and how we can manipulate an HTML page using the DOM API.